Sounds like a plan.
Well, welcome back, and we're back with more Speeding Through History. As always, I'm your host, Jim Zufall. I need to let you know of a couple of things before we get started with our guest. First of all, this is the final episode of Speeding Through History Season 2. Decided last year when we started with Season 1 that this would be an off-season project. And here we are with opening days at several speedways coming up right around the corner. So the off-season is officially over. We will be back with Season 3. I already have a handful of guests lined up. Season 3 will be somewhere early or mid November, usually right after the World Finals, is how it worked out last year. So I think that's what we will do. But for the moment, this is the final episode. Before we move on, real quick, I want to make mention of something, and this has to do with history because it's a vintage race coming up, and it's very important to a lot of people, including myself. Uh, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Motor Speedway on June the 20th. I need you to get a big red Sharpie out and circle that date on your calendar. June 20 is the Don Gamble Silver Cup. A lot of people have gotten together and decided something I wanted to do a few years ago and couldn't make it come together, and that is to have a Don Gamble tribute race. And Don and I have talked about this a number of times. We really want to have a Don Gamble tribute race because I don't want to have a Don Gamble memorial race. And he agrees. And he said, you can go ahead and have one. I just hope it's a long time from now. And so do we, all of us. But for the moment, here's a guy who has launched a whole lot of careers and encouraged a lot of people, including our guest, and certainly with me. And I hope the folks that are putting this together on June the 20th allow me to speak a little bit because, this is a guy who's meant so much to so many people for so many decades. And so anyway, June 20th, let's not forget about that. We have brought a new guest in, and this gentleman has the pleasure of being our final guest of season 2 of Speeding Through History. We're joined by a man who is a photographer, an announcer, a radio guy, a writer, and a pretty fair huckster when it comes to selling race cars and trailers and haulers and everything else. But Howie Balis, I want to start here. And the question for you is, how does a nice Jewish boy from Bell Vernon get so involved in the stock car racing? Where did it all start for you, bud?
It started. My family had auto parts stores, so I was always around vehicles, and my dad and I, we were into NASCAR. We watched it a lot on Sundays, and we went to Motordrome, which at the time was a dirt track. It was about 8 miles from the house, and just didn't really have a good time. We were so used to watching the NASCAR, and we discovered Jennerstown and started going up there, and then Motordrome paved, and it just started from there. I mean, we've always been around racing in my family. We used to go to the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix, Three Rivers Regatta, um, all sorts of different aspects of racing.
So I mentioned everything you have done and everything that I'm aware that you've done. You've probably done lots more. Frankly, you're a good deal younger than me, and you've been around as long as I can remember. Um, so I mentioned photographer, announcer, radio. You've written. You're a salesman. First off, was photography the first thing you did?
Actually, the first thing I did, I was just a fan in the stands, and just fell in love with the atmosphere, and um, it was just such a great atmosphere, and you always looked forward to going to the races, whether it was Motordrome, Jennerstown. We ventured out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Motor Speedway, and it was always just great people, great atmosphere, and something I just wanted to be around. And I had the opportunity to meet some drivers, and just fell in love with the sport at a young age. And it just it was it kept me out of trouble, if that makes any sense, because not that I was a bad kid, but I always tried to push that limit, and it was weird. I had a reward if I was good that week. I got to go to the races, and I talked a lot to people, and some people knew that. And it was funny was we went on vacation. I forgot to tell a couple guys, and next time I go to the track, Bob Sprout Costle. I don't know if you knew him.
Oh.
He passed away, but um, he was a big guy, and he motioned me up alongside into the trailer, and he's like, "Hey, what did you do?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You weren't here last week." And I'm like, "We were on vacation." And he's like, "Well, you got to let me know this because I was ready to rip your head off." And it's just, I don't know. The racing community is just a great community.
So I knew you originally as a track photographer, although you are multi-talented. You can announce a race, do a victory lane interview, and pretty much take pictures all at the same time. But when did you first throw that camera strap around your neck and decide you wanted to take pictures of race cars and drivers and so forth?
I always just, I don't know why. It was something that drew me to it. And, when I was young, I used to have a ton of interest. And my parents really never wanted to invest a lot because it changed. I love playing soccer, I love playing baseball, but I'm not a great athlete. And I just got into photography, and I had a little point and shoot camera, and it was great. After the races, I'd go down and take pictures of drivers by their cars, or have my picture taken by the cars. And um, I had a PhD camera, push here dummy, and mastered that. And then when I graduated college, my college graduation gift was a good camera, and it just exploded from there.
You have announced at a number of tracks too. I recall standing next to you a couple of times that I visited the Latrobe Speedway. Where did you announce first?
First announcing job was Motordrome Speedway when they had Sunday Shootout Series. Freddie Foster gave me an opportunity to get involved with it, and I started announcing and taking pictures there. And Mike Lysakowski got me my first full time announcing job, which was up in Clearfield at Clearfield Mountain Speedway, the asphalt track. And it's kind of funny was he told me they were looking for an announcer, and he got us together, and they asked me to send them a resume, which I did. And I put on there, I worked at Motordrome. Well, they saw Motordrome and really didn't look any further, made me an offer, and I accepted. And the first night I get up there and they looked at me, they're like, "You look different." And I'm like, "Where in the heck did you ever see me at?" And they're like, "Chase to the Checkered." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's Mike Nelson. I'm Howie Balis." And they're like, "Well, you had Motordrome." I said, "You didn't read where it said Sunday Shootout Series at Motordrome Speedway." So it was kind of weird when you travel 2 hours to go to work and they look at you and they didn't think they hired you; they hired somebody else.
They
But
thought they were getting somebody else. That's amusing. How long did you stay at Clearfield?
I was there for 2 years, and then I went to Jennerstown, and I left Clearfield because they hired a new promoter, Craig Wilson, and Craig was an announcer, so I knew they weren't going to pay me to do a job that they could include in Craig's responsibilities. So I had the opportunity to go to Jennerstown, which was a lot closer and a track where I grew up as a kid. So I ventured up to Jennerstown, and I was working for Steve Pellis and them. So, and that was kind of cool too, because when I was young, I was a big Steve Pellis fan. So to go work with one of your heroes was kind of cool.
So that's Clearfield and that's Jennerstown. I already mentioned Latrobe, and you said Motordrome, of course. So rattle off the rest of the tracks. Where are you at now?
I'm at Marion Center. I've been at Roaring Knob. I've been at Latrobe on multiple occasions. I've worked for every promoter at Latrobe, from Chester Retta to Joe Gumbatch to the Bates. And right now, I'm working there on Friday nights, working on their motocross program, which is something I really don't know anything about, but it's a form of racing. It's fun, and it's something I enjoy. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, as the announcer, and of course I've been in those shoes as well. There's a challenge sometimes. Now, motocross, I can't imagine because it's just all action all the time. I mean, they're just these guys are on the edge of being dead every turn. I mean, it's just crazy. But you've certainly had the chance to try to make a race exciting. I go back to my early days at Pittsburgh. After my first year there in 2015, the Mileys dropped the super late models, and everybody went clear out of their mind because what are you doing? Well, my answer to them was, listen, as the guy holding the microphone, I can't make a 5 car super late model race any more exciting than I can make a 5 car 4 cylinder race. When there aren't a lot of cars on the track, how in the world, Howie, do you make the fans want to get on the edge of their seats when you have 5 cars spread all over the track? I mean, that is a big challenge, is it not?
It is, but everybody got their own style of announcing. And I've been blessed. I've had the opportunity. I've become friends with a lot of the drivers. So I know a lot more. I know the history about the driver. And there's just something, it doesn't matter if he's driving a super late model or a 4 cylinder. When a driver gets his first ever win, that's just, I mean, that's going to throw excitement right there. And part of your job is to make, no matter what's going on, seem exciting. And you've been in the same position I have. You got a driver who will win 10, 12 features in that division in 1 year. You got to change the questions up. I mean, you
Sure.
can't go down with your standard. Okay, hey, da da da. You got to, based off of what that race was, you got to pull something, and you got to pay attention because you never know what that might be.
So while you have two old announcers here chatting away, you certainly have had this happen to you, and I had it more times than I care to think about. And Don Gamble and I joke about this all the time. You get a guy who hits victory lane. He should be excited. Somewhere down deep, he is excited. But you put the microphone in front of him, and you literally have to pry words out of his mouth. That makes for a very boring victory lane. And if I'm the sponsor of that car, and you're not talking about the sponsors and how great it is to have them behind you, I'm not a happy sponsor. How in the world do you get these guys to basically do their job?
You walk them to it, and you'll mention a few, and then hopefully they pick up the rest. And you kind of train them. I mean, everybody should. There are some guys that wear their emotion on their sleeve, and there are some that they call them Iceman because they're as cold as ice. And it's like you got to build that excitement. And I've always done stuff a little bit different. I always try to bring the fans, and I always try to include the kids into it. So you know, we had a issue up at Jennerstown, and we had a guy who didn't show a lot of emotion, and unfortunately, his son passed away. And I didn't know this. He was a Boy Scout, and it was Boy Scout night at the races, and we brought down the Boy Scouts, and that guy just, I mean, seeing him break down, but it was the emotion. You gotta. I don't want to say you got to feed off that emotion, but you feed off the emotion. And if it's not there, sometimes you got to put gas onto that fire to get the emotion going.
You announced at Motordrome. You undoubtedly attended Challenger. That's 2 tracks that are gone. Tell me about the tracks you missed the most of those that are gone.
I worked at Thunder Valley, and I missed that place. That was a great. It was a great time, and you know, I I had great times at all three of those tracks, and it's not necessarily the track; it's the people you meet there, and I've just tried to have fun, and you know, I go to the races. I go really early because I want to go around. I want to talk to the people, and you never know. Like, hey, sometimes like if I try to line stuff up for intermission, I'll have drivers come up, and I always try to keep something going because nobody wants to sit there with nothing to look at and dead silence. So I'll try to like do my information, and I always tell a driver, hey, if you got a sponsor coming tonight, you let me know. We'll make sure to plug them. But I always try to plug all the team sponsors because without those marketing partners or sponsors, you're not going to have the racing. I mean, it's a very expensive sport. And, I've had people come up to me. One guy said, hey, my car is running eighth, but I heard my name mentioned. And I always just try to, I get my sheets together. I have my primary sponsors, and, I always just try to plug them. I mean, that's, I feel, is one of my jobs. And it's to keep everybody entertained and keep the show going. Cause you never know. You got a red. I'll grab the wireless and go down and start interviewing the drivers on the track who are sitting there. And it's like, hey, let's talk about this race going on, because I'm trying to pull attention from away from the accident. Because unfortunately, I've been hurt before, and
Yeah.
everybody's looking, and you don't want that.
So that's, of course, a part of your history too. You mentioned that you were hit by a race car. Am I right?
Yeah, up at Thunder Valley, I spent 102 days in the hospital, and I had to learn how to walk again and everything. It wasn't a good deal, but I mean, I'm still here, and what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, and you know,
We talked about something like this at with the Walters when I had Larry, Jeff, and Colton Walters on, and of course Larry goes back many, many years, and even Jeff's memory goes back to, and we talked about it because we had Larry's wife on as well. There was a time when women were not allowed in the pits, and certainly kids were not allowed in the pits. Well, you look around now, and I mean, you got 9-year-olds running around on quads in some places and so forth. I'm an adult and I don't have my head on a swivel enough sometimes, especially in a sprint car atmosphere where these cars just aren't stopping. And I mean, you walk past the end of somebody's hauler, you look over your shoulder to see if that car is on its way there, if the car isn't there. You know all this stuff. What, what's your take on all these kids? And I don't mean to be mean about it. It's their safety I worry about.
it is, and I'm always, you know, you're always you got to be like the parent because first of all, nobody goes there expecting to get hurt, but you never know what happens. Somebody wins, and then you'll see people jump on the car to go right back in the pits, and I'm like, hold up, guys, you can't do that because if somebody falls, you don't want somebody get hurt, God forbid, killed in front of everybody. So it's like it's pretty. I always say it's pretty bad when Howie Balis got to be the voice of reason, but I'm like, trying to teach these people and not teach, just try to keep an eye on everybody. And you know, I've done other jobs, but that you haven't mentioned at racetracks. I've been a race director, and I go around and I do safety inspections, and it's like people just don't think that anything bad can happen. Unfortunately, I've had bad stuff happen to me, and you got to preach to them. And it was funny was we had one guy who came and they just bought a car and he put his daughter in it. And I went up just to do the safety inspection. I'm like, your belts are expired. And he goes, well, what's your point? And I'm like, my point is your belts are expired. I try to give everybody 1 week if the belts look somewhat safe. But, I had a guy one time, his belts were 20 years old.
Wow.
And it's like, come on, you can't run like that. But I'm not a belt safety expert. I'm not certified, but
But you can read a
you know,
date.
yeah. I mean, you know, I try to help everybody out, and then people like want to argue with you. It's like, I had one grandfather. I said, "Hey, his belts are out of date," and he goes, "And?" I'm like, "Well, why don't you strap in the car?" Well, I'm not a racer, but you're putting your grandson out there in
Right.
belts that are expired,
Right.
and I'm like, I got expired milk at the house. You want to drink it? Why would I drink it? Why are you using expired belts? It's just you sit there and argue over the dumbest stuff.
So you've announced several tracks. Is there one particular race that stands out as, man, that was awesome? That's the best race I ever called.
There have been quite a few, but um, I would venture to say the night that Adam Fulton won at Latrobe, when he never won before and he took the lead coming off turn number 4 to the checkered, you couldn't build that excitement. And if you didn't leave there a race fan that night, you're not a race fan. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that. When cars are side by side, nose to tail, and they come off 4, and you really don't know who won. I always enjoy a driver's first ever win because
Yeah.
it's the excitement. And, you know, everybody deserves their just dues. And you got to remember there's only one winner. And I always try to go and interview other people. And you never know. We've been around this sport a long time, and you never know um, that could be their last time there, or it could even be the last time. You look at somebody like Michael Doritsky.
Sure.
Michael was 29 years old, and I I had the privilege of announcing a lot of his wins and doing some interviews with him. And you're like, okay, yeah, this is his eighth win of the year, but here we are now, and Michael's gone.
Yeah.
So you don't realize it until something like that happens, that you know you're really you're you don't know what you got till it's gone, if that makes any sense.
And setting a tragedy like that aside, nobody knows when you're in victory lane. That guy's in victory lane. That might be his last win ever. But you
Hmm.
don't know that because he may go another 10 years and never win again. So I think your point of you got to make that moment special for them. And I think, and I'm sure you have some of these moments too. I think moments create themselves regarding who is with you, not who is with you, but who is with the winner in the speedway, at the speedway, the kids that come around, the nephews, the sister-in-law with the little kids who've never been to a racetrack before, and Uncle so-and-so wins the race. It doesn't get any more special than that. I had a guy who got me in victory lane and said, I'm taking the microphone off of you. And I said, okay. And why? He said, well, you'll see. I said, okay, good deal. So we do the interview. He takes the microphone, he leans in the car, and he pulls out an engagement ring. And of course, his girlfriend, then fiance, was there. Those are the moments doing this job, the job you're doing with all your announcing, that you treasure. And then you get the privilege of being able to photograph it as well.
Yeah.
You talk about preserving history. What I'm trying to do here is preserve some history, but you've been doing it for years with your camera.
Yeah, I mean, it all started back in 1996, a long time, 30 years. And I
How
mean, it's
many uh, how many photos you think you've taken over the years?
probably 400, 500,000.
Wow.
And
One of these days I'm going to have Bill Truby on this show. And Bill was the track photographer at Pittsburgh for 25, 26 years. Of course, now he's at Keystone Raceway Park, helping Jim Senkowitz with everything up there. You got to be talking in the millions for
yeah,
somebody like that. And how many of those? Now, you say you started things like in '96, just entering the digital age in those days. But these guys that have been doing it for decades. You're talking about developing all your own film. I'm sorry, but how easy do we have it?
I never did it. I started out and I would be out at Walmart middle of the night dropping off rolls of film. So as soon as they opened that, they could develop them and go pick them up at like 10, 11 o'clock. And then you're going home and scanning or trying to deliver pictures so that they can get into the racing publications. And I mean, digital is great for the convenience, but man, I miss those days going to Walmart and getting those roll of film and seeing what you got back. With digital, you see it. If it's not right, you can Photoshop it and make it into something. 35 millimeter, it is what it is. You can't now with the technology today, you could go back to those negatives, but you couldn't do it back then.
Well, and I've said this about photography in or out of racing. When we went to digital, and now everybody's pretty much digital, I'm sure there's a few holdouts still doing film, but um, when we look at a digital picture, and let's take your victory lane photos for instance, you look at that victory lane photo and you look at it in your little viewer screen, and everybody's eyes are closed. Boom, that's gone. This is no good. Somebody has their head turned. Boom, it's gone. Those weren't gone in 35 millimeter. They're all there. But guess what else is there? Something you never even noticed. Oh, look at there. There's Uncle so and so who passed away a week after the race. Or there's, the memories that are in the mistakes are almost better than the memories you're actually trying to capture.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And it was funny. I was working at Latrobe, and Ryan Frazee came, and I've known Ryan a long time, and he came down, and they were watching the races, and I went down and I was talking to him. I said, "What do we got to do to get you here?" And he's like, I want to come, but it's hard. His dad was sick. So Ryan said, I'll get here. Well, he ended up getting there a couple weeks later, and I had his dad's phone number, and I knew Ryan's parents were home. So he started out, I don't know, front row of the heat race, and I just remember they took the green. So I grabbed my cell phone and I called him up, and I'm like, don't say anything, and I just put the phone down so they could hear the call. Ryan ended up winning the heat. So um, I said, I'll call you guys for the feature. So I guess Ryan, by the time they got back to the trailer, mom and dad called Ryan and his sister that was there, and there was one of the guys to drive the truck and trailer. And they're like, hey, guess what? And they're like, yeah, you won the heat. And they're like, how did you know? And they're like, well, we heard it. And they're like, how? Well, how he called us. So then it was funny was maybe funny is not the appropriate word, but he started out front in the feature and he was leading. So I called him, and Ryan ended up winning the feature. And I put my phone in my pocket. I would always start to work my way down with the wireless and be down there so we could go to victory lane, trying to speed up the process. Well, Ryan pulls out onto the track, and I walk up, and I'm like, I had my phone, and I'm like, hey, Ryan, you're not going to believe this. And he's like, what? I'm like, well, you got to call on line number one. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, take the phone. And he looked at it, was his dad's cell phone number. And, it was pretty cool when Ryan got to talk to his dad from Victory Lane. And that's just something that you don't forget. I've done that for a couple different people, but it just, that stuff sticks out in your mind when people appreciate when you do stuff like that.
So you've been around doing this a long time, and you've already alluded to it, and I'm aware of it. You talked about, the track. It's not the track, it's the people. Well, I've said this about racing and other things as well. I was involved in the car cruise community, of course, and I've said this about the racetrack as well. The track, the cars, the speed, that's the canvas. And what we're painting on the canvas is the connections and the friendships and the memories. Um, Talk about some of the people you've grown very, very close with down through the years.
One would be like Don Gamble. I mean, Don, it's funny. I started out, like I said, a fan in the stands, and I can remember always listening to Rapping on Racing on Saturday mornings. Um, it's before you had Facebook and social media, so you could find out who won on all the races on Friday nights. And Don took me under his wing and gave me some opportunities. And, I was one of the last reporters for Rapping on Racing, which was kind of cool. Um, God, I've met so many people through racing. Sammy Style comes to mind, the Ielos, the Kimberleys. I mean, they're more than they're almost like family to me. I mean, we talked about my accident, but when I had my accident, the racing community just stepped up so much to help me, and I'll never forget that. And it was even people like, I won't say I didn't think really like me or I didn't really get along with, but you know, everybody just did everything they could, and I'll never, and I never have forgotten that.
And it sounds to me, because I have this as well, these are friendships you have made with people that you could, in a minute, pick up a phone and call and say, hey, you got a minute to talk.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many more people. Like I said, I'll get a dumb idea in my mind, and it's like, I bounce it off of people, and another good friend that I made from racing's Mason Ziegler, and we've done a lot of business together. And Alex Ferrie's another one, and it's just, you know, they're not business partners or associates; they're very close friends.
So we're getting down to it here, and I do want to talk again about coming to the end of season 2 here. But I think you have a little announcement you'd like to make as well. I think you're ready to move into your next venture. Let's hear about your podcast.
Yeah. When I was at Latrobe, we did a podcast called Right Along with Howie. When I left Latrobe, um, they retained it. But I've been talking with the Bates family, and we're going to fire up Right Along with Howie again. And, we're looking forward to getting it going very soon. And, I'd like to extend the invitation to you, Jim, to have you on there. And,
Sure.
you know, it was always fun. And, we had some pretty cool guests. I got to interview Daryl Lanigan. And Daryl's one of those guys. He doesn't talk a lot. I remember doing a victory lane with him when he won the Sturbussel Memorial. And, it's just trying to feel that excitement. And you're talking about a guy who won World of Outlaw championships and a
Sure.
ton of races and races all over the United States. And here we're having a memorial for a guy who, I'm not being ignorant, he never even heard of, but it was, that excitement. I mean, I think that was actually Daryl Lanigan's last ever win so far.
So
No.
for me, what this has done, and I said to Jeff Giese last week, I appreciate what our friend John McConnell does. But I'm not running all over the countryside chasing people down like he does. I do this from this chair every time for what's now probably about 24 episodes, and that's how it's always going to be. If you can't handle Zoom, well, number one, if you can't figure out Zoom, go find a 14-year-old. They'll figure it out for you. If you can't get to that, if you can't make it work, well, then we just can't do it. I had somebody say, well, can we do this at? No, we do this in my chair, and that's how we do it. So I kind of had to set some rules for that. But yeah, what you're doing, I think, is going to be fun. I would be honored. You need to get a hold of me. I'd be honored to be a guest on the program. And we can talk a whole lot more about the stuff we talk about because we do have a lot in common. Now, other than a phone, I don't really know my way around a camera. I like taking some pictures. Usually, it's funny, I usually forget. I'll get to the end of the night and think, oh, I wanted to take a picture here, or I went to Pittsburgh for that season opener they have in. Well, I saw you there, of course,
Yeah, the
and
Shamrock race.
I thought I always really wanted to just go get a bunch of selfies with a bunch of people like you, like Greg, like all these people, and I always forget anyway because I'm a dope, and I just think, oh, what were you doing? So okay, we're gonna look forward to one more time riding along with Howie. Is that what it is?
Right along with Howie, yeah.
Perfect. All right, we're going to look forward to that. As far as this program goes, again, we're wrapping up season 2 of Speeding Through History with Howie Balis. I want to thank him for being on tonight. What I am going to do is when I post this episode in the 3 places I do, which is my own Facebook page, the Decades of Dirt page, and the Western Pennsylvania Racing History page. Those 2 group pages, I put a link to the YouTube channel. On Facebook, it's just a straight video to Facebook. But I will put on all 3 of those places a link to the Speeding Through History channel. And you can go there. And as I said, I think there's about 24, a couple of dozen episodes now, starting with several episodes with Don Gamble. Once again, he got me started in this, like he got everybody started in so many things, all the way up to, tonight's episode as well. Howie, I want to thank you for being along. I look forward to being on your program where I'll be on the other side of the screen and you'll be asking the questions. Howie Balis has been our guest. Thank you so much for watching all through 2 seasons of Speeding Through History. We want to invite you back. Keep an eye out sometime, early mid-November. We'll be back with more Speeding Through History.